That's good. Alright, is this working? Yes. Okay. So before you start, let me make this bigger so you can see. So before you start, you're going to need a palette knife. You watching? A palette knife. One of these wooden tools are good to use, so that way you can start to scrape into. So you can scrape into the ink, and then you're also going to need one of these. These are called barons. You can either use a baron or one of these sprayers. And then you're going to want to have a tray with ink. I like these plastic ones because they're more clear. But there also are the blue plates that you can use. So if you want to use a blue plate, you can use a blue plate. But I like one of these. And then you're also going to need a tray. So again, I like the white palettes because I think that they are a little bit easier to paint on because they're white. So I like to be able to see what I'm painting on, whereas the brown trays are a little bit darker. So it's up to you which ones you want to use. So what you're going to do, you are going to either be able to print, so I actually printed on this watercolor piece, so you can print on the watercolor piece, or you can just print the same thing on blank paper. So I'm going to have you do it both ways. So you can either start with watercolor or you can start with the white paper. It's going to be totally up to you. So I'm going to do this one on white paper. You have a few ways that you can actually apply the paint. But first what you want to do is just like when we did the watercolor, you want to mix up your own paints. So these are the 5 paints that I want to use. Try to keep it anywhere between like 5 or maybe 7. Any more than that, it's going to be too much and then they'll start to dry out. So you're going to mix them. You want to make sure that you're making up your own colors because if you just use the colors as is, it's going to be really boring. So I'm going to mix a really fun orange.
Like my friend to see a habitat.
Alright. And then I'm actually going to try and do. So you want your piles of paint to be really, really small. You don't want them to be any bigger than like a lima bean or a dime. You want them to be really, really small. This ink is thick, and it's not something like with the acrylic where you're going to put any color that you want and then just kind of see where it goes. You want to make sure that you're only getting the colors or you're only picking the colors that you want to use. So I'm kind of doing this warm palette with the blue colors, with this blue accent. So you want to make sure, okay, what are the only colors that I'm going to need for this print, and then you're only going to take those, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up washing this out, and you're going to end up having to rinse it and start all over for each print. So each print you're going to need a new palette. Okay. So I'm making my new colors. I'm deciding I have a plan in my head of what I want my painting to look like. Printmaking inks dry very, very fast, so you want to make sure that you're able to work pretty quickly. So try to think about what you're going to do ahead of time. I'm actually going to, let's do this, and we'll mix a little orange to make it not so bright. So the palette knife I'm using to stir and mix them because it doesn't absorb the paint. You want to make sure that you're using this palette knife to mix, because if you use a paintbrush, then it will soak up all the paint and you're going to end up, or the ink I should say, and then you're going to end up rinsing it out and it will take away a lot of your ink. Whereas this is really nice because you can just wipe it off. If you want to get a paper towel, you can clean that off, and then you can actually keep all the paint on your palette. So I'm just going to put a little bit in here. Alright. So now I have these all new colors that I'm making. So these are the colors Guys, I really need it to be quiet for 2 more minutes, please, okay? So these are the colors that I'm going to use. I'm ready to go. Now I'm going to move this off to the side. This is what you're actually going to paint on. So you can use a palette to paint on it. You could also use a paintbrush. I like to use the palettes because I think the paintbrushes just use too much of the ink. So you have a few ways that you can choose to apply the paint. I like to apply it in these strokes kind of across the paper, across the palette, but I want you to really explore and kind of see what is going to work for you. So I'm going to take and sort of have a little plan in my head. You want to move quickly, so this should take you no more than maybe 2 to 3 minutes to actually do this part, because these dry very, very fast. Okay? So you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to work. So my paper, so if you notice, if I line my paper up, it's going to come off the edge a little bit, but that's okay. So don't want to go up any higher than this little hole right here. So I'm going to drag some of the ink across. You want to keep the ink nice and thick. Here's where it starts to get too thin and it won't show up. So you want to make sure you're keeping the ink nice and thick. So I'm scraping the paint from my palette. I'm dragging it across. You can do curves if you want. So you could do something like this. You could do short little marks. I like to use up all my paint so I don't have anything left on my palette. And then, so there's no method to my madness. I just like to try and spread the paint out a little bit. I want to try and get on all the way to the corners. Alright, so now I've used all the ink on my palette. I have my print ready. You're going to take your paper. You're going to make sure your name is on the back. You are going to take the paper, line it up, and then press it down. So now you can either use this, which is the brayer, to roll, or you can use this, Theron, or you can just use your hand. Totally up to you. And then you're going to peel it off, and then this is what you get.
So will we choose whether we do it on watercolor or blank, or will we do both?
You're gonna do both. You'll print it on the white paper, you'll print it on the watercolor, you're gonna do a bunch of prints, they take really fast. Once you're done with this, because I can't use this again, you're gonna take it over to the sink, you wash it, and you start all over, okay?
So
Alright.
how many do we make? 3 or 2, 3?
Hold on.